and my story travels back. But I got some guests here, some wonderful guests here, because I invited them here because they have a different perspective on creating. And before we get started, is there any potential or already creators in the audience? You want to make sure I don't leave anybody out? Nobody? Anybody? Anybody ever think about creating? Okay, good. The reason why I say that is because I want to make sure I don't miss out on certain things that, even if you're thinking about creating, I want to be from the evils of the music industry. And I know that's a loaded statement, and it's like that for a reason. I'm no stranger to the music scene. I am currently signed to a record label called Calico Inc. out of Colorado, and my love for music and my love for comics led me to comics. Also working on a second series called Cubicle Wars, being that I am about the office life. I have a story called Cubicle Wars, and it is what it sounds like, office warfare. I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic and have these guys introduce themselves.
Right, I'm James Michael Orr. I'm an author. I'm also a poet. I've written 2 books called The Butler's Apprentice and part 1 and 2, and then I've also written a poetry book called Steady Along. I work with these guys over here at EireneBros, and they've helped me to be able to publish my works. It's 3 books in less than a year, so it's been real great to see that happen, and I've just loved the whole process of it, and love writing, and love working with my daughter Joy, who's an artist, and it's just been great to get into this world. And when I started, I didn't know a whole lot, and now I've learned all the bumps and the hard parts and all the great stuff about it, and I've just loved, this is my first Comic-Con, and love to be here today, so.
Is that super loud, or am I just like being insecure? All right, what about now? All right there. Okay, my name is Jonathan Edwards. I'm one of the owners for EireneBros Publishing, LLC. Eirene, for those of you who probably don't know, it's the Greek word for peace. So we picked that name because we wanted to create a peaceful process for artists and readers alike, and that's the kind of way we do our business structure. I'm also an author, so my book is Those Who Live by the Sword, and it was the book that kind of got us going, and so now we're on year 4, and we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah. And my name is A.C. Peckham. I am a children's author for EireneBros. I've currently got 2 books out, John the Cyber Llama and The Tallest Giraffe, both illustrated by the legendary Mr. Elroy, who's behind the camera over here. And I've got a couple others in the work, one more top secret project that he's also illustrating, and then one with a new illustrator out of Arizona, who's a good friend of mine. I just started writing some silly ideas, and Jonathan here decided to help me get them published and help me achieve my dream of actually getting to be a published author, so here I am.
That's great, guys. As you can see, we're all creating different items. Novels, children's books, comics. This is what these events are about. And at the end of the day, as for me, and I'm pretty sure these guys can speak. We love the creation process, but we also like to inspire others to, whether it's create or do something that they love to do. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we just need that additional motivation to know that things are possible. And this is kind of like we like to tell our story on how we go about things, because what ends up happening is, even though you guys might have different goals, the creation process is still kind of the prep work of achieving that goal or that dream that you want or strive for. Now correct me if I'm wrong, guys, it applies to life too, and that's why we do what we do. Yeah, we love what we create, but we also love, growing the community by inspiring others to go for it, I'm an educated individual, got my college degree, I did everything that I thought I wanted to, was supposed to do according to my parents, but I found comics. I would rather create full-time, but I'm not there yet, but the goal is to get there, and I don't know what else to say about that, except that no matter what it is that you wanted to do it, You guys want to chime in on that message too, you know?
So, that's just gonna bug me. So part of the reason we started our business was, how many of you have an art skill or have a creative mind? How many of you, show of hands, have ever tried to, saw y'all in the back, appreciate it, have tried to market or sell your product either on Etsy or some other format?
Is that easy? No.
Sorry, that was I meant to do that. But it's not easy, right? And there's a lot of business stuff that happens that can make it very difficult. And so having a creative skill and a creative mind is different than making it profitable, if that makes sense.
Creative people. Oh, the batteries.
Check.
It's the Duracell battery ran out. Should have gone with Energizer. Just kidding. They didn't pay me to say that. Dun dun dun. I have ADD, so that's why. How many of you creative people have ADD? Show of hands. Perfect. So part of when you're looking to kind of share your creative stuff with the world, it can be very challenging, and it can sometimes at times be demoralizing when you don't necessarily get the feedback that you want. Sometimes you got to go back and restart. So like for you, how long did it take your comics to kind of get to where you're at now?
Like for me, it took, I say within the course of once it's created, a year to really get some kind of attention. And you all gotta start somewhere, and when I say a little attention, it literally was a little attention. But you gotta take your little wins as they come. Let's just say, for example, one of the very few first wins that I got was getting my first book in the comic shop. You know, but that also was the foundation of my book, because what ends up happening is, whether it's family, friends, total strangers supporting what you do, that makes it much more meaningful. So it does take time, but if you celebrate those little wins, you're winning. You're winning. A win is a win. Doesn't matter. But let's just say I didn't get there the first year and I got discouraged. That doesn't mean quit. It just means go back to the drawing board, you know? What about you guys? I mean, you know.
So I started writing my first book my junior year of college. And it took about 3.5, 4 years after that for it to finally be in the form it is now. And I'm still working on my second book, so I'm on year 3 of getting that one done. So I'm doing the one book every 4 year type route. But in that time period, I've been able to help release 2 of his books, one of our authors is downstairs, 3 of his books. And so in a way it was, you know, what I wasn't able to make with my own product yet, I've been able to help other people. And in a way, for me, it inspires me to keep writing. So one of the things I would say is really key in, if you're looking to either make a profit off of your creation or even just connect with other people through it, is it helps to have a team and to accept people as they come into your life. I had no, Michael over here, I didn't know him from Adam. He just happened to run into one of our business owners. Well, and now he's, you know, our highest book person. I don't know what yeah, he's our star child. But, you know, but Yeah, it's a, it's become a competition between them to see who can release the most books the quickest. But I would never have imagined when I first started writing my book that that was going to happen, or that I'd come to a Comic-Con. This is our third time doing one, third time doing a panel. We weren't even planning on doing a panel, but it's something where your work and the growth of your work kind of grow a life of their own. And it helps to have a team. People that are going to tell you, hey, your stuff isn't as good as you think it is. But also people that are going to say, it is better than you think it is. Does that make sense?
For me, like, I have kind of mixed emotions about just kind of where my numbers are at so far in sales, because, I mean, I've already sold more than I expected of my books that, like, I seriously doubt I could have done without these guys. But for me, the thing that I felt has most been, like, the wins for me is getting to see the reactions on the young reader's face when they crack open a book. I feel the moment I realized, hey, I am a legit published author now, was when I was taking a signed copy of my first book, John the Cyberllama, to a friend at church. I was taking it over to him, and before I could even get it in his hands, his daughters like grabbed it, and Brendan just laid down, started reading it, and just the joy on their faces enjoying something I made. I don't know another word for that feeling other than just magical. And just knowing that something I made, whether that's one person or 1,000 or 1,000,000, something I made has already had a positive impact on someone else's childhood. And it's like, obviously I do want to sell more. I do want to, a good goal is to do this full time, but it's just like, that's been the thing that's been most of the win for me, is just getting to see the impact that my creation is making in other people's lives.
All right, Michael?
So I think the best thing for me is, you know, I've always loved the fantasy genre. I've always loved comic books. And I've loved the most being able to get my family involved with what I do. My daughter Joy is my illustrator, and everybody's kind of pitched in. And I think there's kind of a camaraderie with people who are creative types. Like, you just know you're different from other people because you have this desire to share something that's in you, whether it's music, whether it's comics, whether it's novels or whatever, and you can't help but create. You're already creating. You're already creators. And one of the things I learned early on is that I have to really believe in what I'm creating. I have to believe in the content that I'm making, and I have to believe in the skill and the ability that I have, because I have this for a reason. I have this to share with people. And if I don't do that, then I'm just not going to be me. It's not being me to hold back. And I know a lot of people, they're like, what if nobody likes my ideas? What if nobody wants to read my stuff? What if nobody likes my art? What if nobody, cares about what I'm doing? And I'm here to tell you, you can't help but do something with what you've got. So find a way to be creative. It doesn't always have to be, every little thing. You don't have to always be the artist. You don't always have to be the content creator. You can find a niche that you're really good at, and you can find people who are like-minded who will work with you. And that's been such a great, exciting part of my life, getting to know other authors and people that I can work with and a team that I have. It's like these people were a part of my life and I didn't even know it. They were out there in the universe, and now that I'm connected with them, yeah, I should have been doing this for like 20 years, because I'm probably one of the older guys in the group, so, But I love doing this now. It's filling this hole in me that I knew was there, but I didn't really realize how to fill that. So it's been so fulfilling to be able to do something that I'm passionate about and share that with other people who are passionate. So please use whatever skills you have, whether it's art or writing or comics. Use that skill you have and believe in what you have, because you've been given that for a purpose, for a reason.
Now, I want to touch on something, especially you, and you've kind of alluded to it. You definitely alluded to it. Of course, we all want to sell and get our product out. but the most important thing, I get why it's taking you so long. You've helped other people, but the one important thing that everybody needs to understand is like quality is important, and we, like me myself, I average an issue a year. I know that sounds like a long time, but being self-funded, doing this, every time I do these events, the money I make just goes into back to create more product, So I get why taking so long, but I respect that the quality is important. You want to sell, great, but you also know you're getting more out of seeing the reaction from people, and you just the process. You love the process. I've learned to love the process of just creating in general. This isn't my first rodeo creating, but I love this way of creating, and all the other ways that I was creating, from music to videography to photography to graphic design. Man, I'm a jack of all trades, and I just love to create. It just so happens that my ultimate love right now, and I think till I die, is going to be comics. And all my creative ways led me to comics and led me to meet these awesome guys. I just met these guys this weekend, and I'm like, we just click, and I just I appreciate what they're doing. They took a different approach, the teamwork approach, and that's great. Never be afraid to ask for help. My team consists of my friends, family, and now I would love to say fans, but really, those people have become part of my friend, family, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same. My fans aren't my fans. They're my friends. They're my families. And to be honest, they keep me going too. So just create, do whatever it is that makes you happy. And I found my way. These guys seem to find their way, And I hope what we're saying up here is helpful to you guys. I want to switch gears a little bit and actually talk about the creative process. I know I've had a few people guys made it up here, but I know there were some guys that asked me, how do I get into comics? Really, it starts with the idea. And I can speak for these guys that it all started with a movie or a play. You got what they call scripting, and it's literally describing what's going on in each little box with the dialogue. My planning stage on that is really just studying like what I already do. I just enjoy reading comics, so while I'm reading comics, that's my method of research and studying, and lets me guide my pace, what types of art to be in specific scenes. Guys kind of how they go about how they start, and then we'll just move on from there, because there is more. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you gonna have any art in your stuff, or just straight up just words? Okay, good deal. And you're obviously gonna have your art. So in a minute, let's talk about how we kind of come up with the art itself. Because here's the thing that I feel like is important is, how do we communicate to an artist our ideas? You go through this too. You got to communicate the idea, and since we're not like artists first, we may have to try to do some different things. And so I'm gonna let these guys. Which one of you guys want to go first?
So I'll kind of share mine from two perspectives. Because one, as a business owner, I'm gonna talk about the creative process with that, especially if you're looking to market your product, and kind of what I do. And then I'm also gonna talk about as a writer. So from the business perspective, my creative approach is looking at is thinking very much about how I engage with y'all, but also, since we have other authors and other products we're looking to bring on, is how they're gonna interact with you guys, how they're gonna interact and be perceived by people outside of this room. And so that's a big part of is in the if you're looking to monetize what you're doing or turn it into a part-time or full-time, is I would strongly suggest thinking very heavily about the person impacted by your business. Or even more so, I try and think about the community, is how can I help somebody in the community with my business? And I think that allows you to stay grounded, because once you start getting some success, you know, it's very easy to become arrogant and full of yourself, but you know, money comes and goes, you know, opportunities come and go. But people are gonna always remember how you treated them. So when the money's gone, if you treated someone like crap, well, they're gonna care about you even less, you know. But if you treated them well, they're always gonna remember that. And I realized how important that was, because we did our first Comic-Con, not last year, but so 3 years ago. And that's when we just had my book. My book had came out in May. And so August, I had never really been to a Comic-Con before. I'm a nerd, but I just, you know, I'm cheap like that. But we had such a good time meeting with people, and we were out hustling that book. Well, the next year, people remembered us. I mean, a whole year had passed, and I was just like, how did I make that much of an impact in your life where you remember me? You know, a year apart, we didn't talk to any of those folks. Well, and fast forward to now, I mean, some of those people are very dear friends of me. So on the business side, it helps to apply the same creativity that you use in your books or in your art, apply that in your business. So now as an artist, so for those of you who don't know, which would be probably most of you, I'm also a mental health professional. So when I'm building my book, part of my process in creating that book is to address mental health concepts. So I'm thinking about, okay, what kind of person is going to be reading my book? How can parts of my book be restorative or make them think about some things? So there's parts of my book that will trigger painful memories or happy memories or growth-inspiring memories. I also try and add multiculturalism. So for me, I've taken a few different language classes. I've traveled overseas. So in my book, I include different languages, some of which I know, some of which I really don't know. And part of that is an idea I stole from J.K. Rowling, because she used. All right, so that's the other part. So the actual content of my book comes from a whole lot of daydreaming. And how many of you have ever had someone talk to you for like 20 minutes, you have no idea what they said? So that's where I get all the content from my book, is having conversations with people. Sometimes it's my mother, and she's talking, and I'm just like, oh, that'd be cool to add there in my book. Or I'll watch an anime, and then I'll start daydream. Any of y'all daydream while watching anime? Okay, good, I thought I was the only. I feel bad sometimes. But I'll just be like, I'm gonna steal part of that from my book. So that's the other part. The best ideas are stolen. I'm just kidding. No, not.
Don't plagiarize, kids.
Yeah, don't plagiarize. It's legal.
Yeah. See, I'm really excited about this because where do I begin talking about the creative process? So.
Let's start with that, with the idea,
So.
how did your idea,
How does one become a cyber?
Well, John the Cyber Llama started as just some weird idea I had. It was this random, nonsensical idea that I had for a while, until one time, it was actually on one of the library computers at my university, that I sat down and just typed out a whole story. And not too long after that, they redid the whole computer system, and I lost the file for that. I have no idea if that's even anywhere. But I still had that character in my head, and it was a couple semesters later when I was taking a creative writing workshop class that I wanted to do something with this cyber llama. And so I wrote a story, John the Cyber Llama, which was the story that would go on to become my first published book. After quite a bit of editing and stuff as well, though. But I didn't immediately think of it as a children's book. It was just a silly idea that I started thinking, maybe I can actually do something with this. And when I came to realize maybe this could be a children's book, I wanted it to be something, lighthearted, but with a positive message. And so a synopsis of the story John the Cyber Llama lives in Llama-America, which is populated by llamas, and there's robots from the neighboring country of Mexico.
It's very funny.
Yeah. So the robots and llamas don't get along, and John the Cyber Llama, being half robot, half llama, has a lot of negative experiences from both of them. But in the midst of that, it shows kindness to everyone he meets, trying to make Llama-America a better place. And some of the stuff that happens to him, it's nothing awful, but in a children's book context, is based on experiences that friends of mine have had. Like when he's walking through the robot store, and the robots are keeping an eye on him because they don't like llamas. That actually happens to a little black girl that I know who got separated from her white mom at Target one time, and people started following her around trying to keep an eye because she was black. And so
You're trying to touch on like
yeah, like
that people go through.
yeah, like real world issues. Yeah. So it's like I wanted to touch on like something serious, something real world issues, but approach it in a way that it's understandable for kids, and approach it in a way that shows the world doesn't have to be that way. You can change the world one act of kindness at a time. And that's what John the Cyber Llama does. And so I decided, you know, this is a cool idea I could actually do something with. And it was actually, I think Jonathan approached me when I was talking to him about it, about publishing it. And from there, all the really tedious work began. So I tried illustrating it on my own at first. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, because I'm an awful artist. But it was after a bit of a mental breakdown that I admitted I need help. And I had this one friend that I already knew was an amazing artist. And so I just kind of like randomly came into his living room one day. I was just like, hey man, how's it going? So anyway, I'm writing this book. Do you want to illustrate it? And so that's kind of where I got him on board, and he and I were already good friends, and I already knew he was an amazing artist, and so we started discussing that, and I showed him I can't even call it drawings, just weird scribbles, whatever it was I had.
Rough drafts.
Rough
Yeah,
drafts,
we'll call it
sure.
thumbnails, whatever.
But he was able to like really bring that character to life in such a beautiful way that I could never have on my own. Like John the Cyber Llama is just as much Mr. Elroy's book as it is mine. And especially just like, we discussed like page by page, like what was happening on there, what it would look like. And so like how facial expressions, etc. And just kind of the author-illustrator chemistry that kind of has to be there, because like I've seen plenty of cases in which like there was a really talented author and a really talented illustrator that just didn't have that chemistry. And so I think it was definitely a major plus to have someone that I love and know as well as Mr. Elroy to help bring this story to life, because like he's someone who gets my mind and I get his, and like we're able to actually understand and communicate that in a way that we can bring it to life and then communicate it to the world. And I was blessed to experience very much the same thing with my most recent book that I'm hoping to come soon, Bun Bear Believes in You, which I'm actually working with new illustrator Stephanie Russell, who lives in Arizona. She has an art page on Facebook, Artsy Steph Art, that I had been following for a little while, and Bun Bear was another, just one of those random ideas that I had. It's just like, what if I did something with this? And I saw her art. It was actually her art that inspired the whole rest of the story that came with the character. And so,
Each of the point inspiration. All
yeah. So it's like one could argue Bun Bear is more her story almost, because it's just like writing and everything, but it's just like her style was exactly what I had in mind. And so I messaged her. I was like, hey, do you think you could hypothetically draw this character for me? Like not even a day later, she basically, with a very basic character description, pulled the exact image out of my head. And I was just like, hey, do you want to make a book out of this? And she said yes. And so like, she's still working on the illustrations for that, but just getting to like see the process of that and like communicate with her back and forth on, I honestly don't want to talk about the formatting process. I had nightmares, I still have nightmares about formatting John the Cyberllama, but like this guy knows what I'm talking about. There's a lot of really tedious work that goes into the creative process, but it's like when you have someone that you're able to work with and bring it to life in ways that you could never on your own. It's like that to me is the most incredible part of the creative process and the most fun and important.
Quick plug-in, just free tidbit of advice. Hit the save button when you're working on projects.
Yes.
Because then you'll have to be like creative in a different way because your stuff didn't save, so.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that, but I have a different philosophy. Let's just say you did forget to hit the save button. Everything happens for a reason. I lost my issue 1 of Trouble's Back, and to be honest, the second rendition of it was 1,000 times better. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
It gives you that nice little heart attack really quick.
Well, you would have thought I would have learned. When I was doing music heavily, I lost a whole album that I worked on for a whole year. Luckily, I was able to recreate better in 6 months.
So when I started writing, started it because I wanted to sort of connect with my teenage daughters. They were just teenagers. Aww. But anyways, I had told them stories about this character named Jinx that just popped in my head one day, and I told stories of my youngest daughter, a little thing. I got to where I had to create so many stories. I'm like, I got to stop this, because it was every night I had to come up with new stuff. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. So I wanted to just write it all in a book. And so I started writing, and one of the things I found early on is that if you want to write, you have to discipline yourself to find a particular time of day to work on your book. Every day if you can, because even if you're blank, even if you can't think of anything, just kind of typing things out, it helps to get through that struggle that you're making when you're trying to unblock yourself. And so I started getting up early in the morning. Now, not everybody is a morning person, but if you can find the time that's best for you mentally, where you can perform at your best, pick that time to do whatever creative outlet you're going to do, and dedicate, even if it's 5 minutes, sometimes from here. And whenever I started Jinx, I'm like, I'm just going to pretend I'm this person. And I started this weird connection with my main character that was like, I felt like we were sort of shared the same headspace. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you, or you really associate with the characters that you've created, but it started connecting with me, and I thought, and I understood what she was going to do the next time she did something, or how she would react to some situation. And that's kind of how I kept writing is, well, what would she do in this scenario? How's she going to react to this problem? And that's kind of how I started writing. And later on, I had to actually go back and fill in all the gaps and make sure everything kind of strung together. But really, for the process of it, I had to discipline myself to make sure that I was adding to my content every day, and that I would go back every time and edit and re-edit, and sometimes scrap a whole chapter and completely rewrite because I knew it wasn't right for the character and it wasn't right for the book. So that process, I mean, it's ongoing. If I could, I could go back to my first book and I would make so many changes. I can't anymore because it's already published. But you keep thinking, oh, how can I improve this? How can I improve this? And that's a big part of the writing process, whether it's comic books or novels, is you got to keep improving on what you did previously. Listen to people who give you advice. Have a couple of people that can read it ahead of time and give you thoughts, especially big ideas like, I didn't get the introduction. It didn't really connect with me, or I didn't really understand what was going on right here, or there's not enough action in this part. Those kinds of feedback, it's really helpful in the writing process, and it disciplines you to be a better writer. So that's helped me a lot. is getting feedback from people I trust and I know won't say, oh, that's a really good book. They'll really give you the advice like, yeah, I didn't like that. That was dumb. Don't do that again. Right? And that kind of helped me to see something that maybe I couldn't see on my own. So that's been my process, and I still, every morning, except at Comic-Con, I didn't want to write while I was at Comic-Con. It felt like that was too much. But every morning I get up and I write. And if I miss it, I know it, and I'm mad at myself because I didn't do something that day. So that's helped me to stay creative and to be able to continue to feed that creative process.
While we're still on creative process, I just want to kind of emphasize the old adage, write what you know. It's like something that when I realized the story I was going to write was going to be a children's book, I had to start reading children's literature, getting to know how to properly tell a story that's both appropriate and effective.
Kind of like when I was saying, like, when I read comics, that's my study material. It's kind of the same way, and it's helpful, right?
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna write children's literature, you gotta read children's literature. If you're gonna read comics, you gotta read comics. If you're gonna read, or if you're gonna write anime, fantasy, modern day, whatever the heck this guy made,
Would you say RPG?
you gotta intake that so that you can like understand what it is you're trying to create. And so that's just something that I honestly already enjoy just reading kids' books because they're really quick reads, but just wanted to stress the importance of, if you have an idea, read other stuff like that.
And just free tidbit of advice, when you Google certain things for your project, just know the FBI will follow you depending on what you have to Google to research. So, just free tidbit right there.
What's the question?
So, question, I have a ton of ideas, and I do write, and I do some sketches. My trouble is I feel like if I try to research size for the art,
Okay.
Marvel wants this, somebody else will say, well, make it whatever you want. And I'm really looking for, what is that decent magic size of PPI and inches, what, you know?
Okay, so artwork is the easiest to kind of understand, and that's a great question. You know, when it comes to artwork, obviously you might have to resize some things. The resolution, DPI as you're saying, is basically resolution. So when you're resizing stuff, you don't want it to look blurry and whatnot. 300 DPI is the perfect resolution. 350 is okay too. Anything above that is really overkill. Great question. The other thing about like the figuring out the sizes. Now, what's helped me is, since I'm gonna shop around and see which company I'm gonna use, basically it starts with looking at the different companies and downloading the templates to kind of understand, like, okay, they need them in this size. There is some standard sizes, but every print company is different, where there may be some slight variation. I've printed my comics through 3 different companies, and the difference has literally been like fractions of an inch type thing, you know? Let me ask you, what kind of medium, or what are you trying to?
Illustrator, Photoshop.
But like the end project, is it going to be a comic? Comic? Okay. I'll name a few, like Print Ninja, Comics Wellspring. Just like kind of Googling, you know, comic book printing companies or whatever. They all have templates, and if they don't, you request them. And since you're already using Photoshop and Illustrator, they already have those files. I would recommend Comics Wellspring, because their templates are readily available. And basically all it is now at that point is getting in that format, and then going forward, you can draw your stuff bigger and then just downsize it, or draw it in that size already, you know? So that's a big help, and that was actually overwhelming at first to try to figure that out, and I'm sure it was to these guys to try to figure out, like, which companies are we going to use and how do we get it in that format. I took the approach of downloading the templates and doing it myself because I was already, tech savvy with that stuff. But if I struggled, I was going to ask for help. But remember, 300 DPI and templates aren't going to save your life, because even if you use one template from one company, you switch to another company, it's going to be like very, very small change. So the other thing I want to touch about, you already touched on it, how you communicate with your artist. When I first started, I communicate with my artist with my words. I'm a writer first. So I would, as descriptive as I could get, I'm describing what's happening in every single box, every single page. I mean, I would even provide references if I felt like it would need. Now, I like what you did, is even though you feel like your sketches were rough, that was the idea, and you were able to communicate that with your artist, I just now started doing that, and I have no shame in drawing stick figures to communicate my idea to my artist. And that works too, I'll let you talk, like how you communicate with your daughter.
Oh, yeah.
So we kind of had an interesting way to work. She would actually ask me for a sketch, and I'm not a great artist, but I can make something that looks identifiable and that I can capture the feelings that I want from it. And a lot of times what she'll do is she'll take that as a template, and then she'll go from there. Sometimes she sticks with sort of the basic template that I gave her, and she just adds to it, changes it, improves it. Sometimes she completely goes her own route, but at least it gives her an idea of where she wants to go. And then I've learned to trust her artistic sort of direction, because she is the artist and I'm not. And even though I have a vision in my head for what I think the character should look like, if she has a sort of a vision or an inspiration, I try to give her as much room as I can, because artists just know what works. They have this second sense, and they can say, okay, this is going to look good, this is going to look good. If there's something that's just way off, I'll say, hey, can you change this? But it's usually a minor change. And so I think what Aaron said about being able to connect with that person. You might have a great artist and a great writer, but they may not click. And there's lots of great artists and writers out there, but finding two people who really mesh and understand each other.
Even though there isn't necessarily art in my book, as a author, I want people to be able to depict the images in my book in a different format. But even for me as a business owner and all of that, a big thing of whenever you're trying to take what's up here and even what's here into another format or another level is kind of what Michael is saying, is communication. And understand that communication is... Now, obviously there's some creative changes, but did the characters in the films look different than what you view them when you read the book in your mind? Well, then that's the tough part about communicating, but we just got to know that it exists, and it's just something you got to learn to work with.
You touch on something that's very important. A lot of times, when it doesn't matter what we're creating, there's still a lot more people behind the scenes. And what we're going to tell you guys that we might help you, So, any questions on whether it's creative process, how you get started, anything that we might have missed? But before we go past that, I wanted to plug a good idea that I've had in the works. I'm sure all of us got different perspectives on that. My idea is more of, I have an idea, so I want to write it down,